Relationships are stressed and sandwiches are consumed when Dagwood Bumstead and his wife Blondie are faced with furniture-related financial pressures, job loss, and marital discord in the 1938 adaptation of Chick Young's comic strip Blondie. For better or worse, that's the movie we're digesting this week on Movie Bones. 28, Ryan. I looked it up. There are 28 of these films, and I don't have words for that. We all know Lord of the Rings, right? Everyone out there, you guys remember Lord of the Rings out there? How Bilbo says that he's feeling all stretched and thin, like butter scraped over too much bread. But here we are in 2024, and there's the comic strip that spawned these horrible movies, goes all the way back about the 1930s or earlier, and it's still there today. It's like a zombie that won't stay dead. You can double tap, you can triple tap, but it's still out there today. I can get there's a certain amount of comfort that can come from familiarity. There is something else that familiarity breeds. And you know what it is? It's contempt. And of the two, I think, Ryan, you know which one I'm feeling right now. So am I crazy? What I'm talking about here?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand.
Tell me what you're feeling about tell me what you're feeling after this.
For 28 movies, these two people, let me make sure their names are correct.
They're same actors, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. For 28 movies, Arthur Lake and Penny Singleton made their careers. I did look up their acting credits, and there's not much beyond
this.
Being Dagwood Bumstead and being Blondie Bumstead.
Can you imagine being the actor who is pigeonholed as one specific character for your entire career? I don't think that happens very much. I mean, some characters get known for, like, they only have, like, the one-hit wonder types, where they have the one film that they're known for and everything else, but they still do other things, you know? If you look at their IMDb resumes, usually there's other things involved. But to have one character be stretched out for that long and nothing else happening in between or after, before or after, that's quite a feat, I have to imagine.
That begs plenty of questions. Did the studio just, like, lock them both in on such a good deal to where they couldn't, or such a deal, maybe not a good deal, but such a deal to where they couldn't get out of it?
Yeah.
Did they just... You know, I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's a different time, so different things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
But was it such a good set that it's like, hey, we don't want to do anything else?
Or is it just that cheap? It's like it's
28 movies.
28 movies, and if you look at the titles, I looked. By the way, and I didn't just look at the number. Did you look into any of the plot synopses too, Ryan? Because I did.
There was a couple that, like, I kind of looked into, but probably not as extensively as you probably did. So,
because I can tell you right now that I did. It's like, and I looked at all these, and it's like a lot of the same plot elements come up. And as a segue into this film itself, one of those common elements is petty jealousy. Like, I'm talking like instant petty jealousy, completely unstable marriage relationship materials. Okay. Spouses keeping secrets, making large unilateral decisions without your spouse, telling your child not to lie while lying yourself, like 2 seconds later, saying things, wonderful marriage relationship types, things like, the trouble is you don't bring him up right. There's a song in the beginning of the Blondie theme song where one of the lyrics that is in it is, Blondie's not always right. I let her think she is. All of my thoughts are bright, she says in response, as long as he thinks they're his. So, wonderful relationship skills we've got going on here, okay? And I've got to say, it's like, what is the audience supposed to be thinking of this, Ryan? I mean, in my view, it's like the only way, this is a modern audience thing. So, as a modern audience viewer, the only way I could think that you could take these concepts and these things is if it was pure, undiluted satire. It's meant to undermine everything that this setup involves and have other characters react to it. Of course, that's not what they're doing here. But I mean, am I crazy? Is there something? Is there any other way you could see it working, or is it like what do people see in this stuff?
Well, I think what they were trying to do, what I realized watching the movie, is that it is one comic strip after another.
Yes.
Trying to tell a whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it messes itself up.
Yes.
Everything. Because it's self, like, if you really, I mean, like you did, but like, if you, people out there, if you go and watch this film, go and read a couple of the comic strips.
It's still out there to read.
Yeah, you can upload online, go get the Sunday paper. I would guess, I haven't read it in a long time myself. I used to read the comic strips, like not just that comic strip, but I like the Sunday morning paper comics. But go read the comic strips, and you can see not any specific comic strip, that what I'm saying, but you can see how, like, there's different segments of this movie, and it's like, okay, what they were trying to do is rip it from that and then make a larger story, which is probably why this movie only lasts about an hour.
Yeah.
And now, like, as we were saying that earlier, this idea of 28 hour-long specials or hour-long movies.
Interesting choice of words. Yes, I agree. It's like a special.
Yeah, realistically, because I don't think any of them go beyond an hour. I mean, realistically, in today, in the streaming, in time of streaming, it would literally just be a season of a show. It felt like that. Like, there were times it felt like that. Like, when the movie opened, I was sitting there thinking to myself, I was like, is this a pilot of a TV show? Because, like, they have, like, it just felt like a pilot of a TV show.
And like you said, it's like, it's so episodic in a way, but it's episodic for an entire hour. It's like, even, like, you think of some of the if you're doing sketch comedy, which is the closest thing I can think of to a visual representation that's been successful, that kind of mirrors that very short form, joke-based, format that the comic strip inhabits in the print paper, right? And it's all very short. Saturday Night Live is like, half an hour to 40, maybe 40 minutes at tops of different sketches. And Mad TV back in the day, if you're old enough to remember Mad TV in the early days of Saturday Night Live, half an hour, right? And they weren't even trying to string these things together into one overarching plot. And you end up in a world, mechanically speaking, where the plot is straight up non-sequitur material. Everything that happens just cause. There's no way to intuit your way through how this world works. A world where real estate business guys randomly have tinkering obsessions with malfunctioning hotel vacuum cleaners. And that's the actual plot this film depends on to get from point A to point B, to help resolve itself. Where a running sandwich joke that struggles on the first iteration repeats a couple times and peters out when the script loses interest, going nowhere. Where hotels randomly have optometrists. I mean, I don't know if that was a thing or not. I mean, you could tell me. I didn't bother with looking that up. But it seemed like a hotel has an optometrist in the lobby. And, like, I've heard of, like, trying to, like a concierge, sure, you've got certain services, but an optometrist seemed like it was a bit of a stretch. And
I mean,
go ahead.
I would say that, like, not trying to go down that little bit of a thread, because, the hotel used to be kind of like, it's a place to go do business. I mean, not just a place to sleep, but sometimes it's a place to go do business, because people meet there to sell products, to pitch products, things like that. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why a hotel has an optometrist.
If I had other things to think about, it wouldn't have probably stuck in my brain as much. I mean, it's not like this would be a thing I would dwell on so much if it wasn't for the fact that there really isn't much else to distract you from the kind of really kind of bland, stupidity that's going on that is driving everything around it. And, there's other things like character-based things like don't make any sense. Like when you're a grown adult in a world full of cars and maybe you don't have as much, you don't have a lot of money, maybe you don't have a car, I suppose, but that doesn't mean that when you suddenly need to get from point A to point B, you decide to steal your mother-in-law's car to meet someone who you need to talk to. And that's the best course of action you can take. Not a taxi, not a bicycle. No, grand theft, here we come, right away. Yeah. Boom, And it just kind of like head smack, over and over again. So did you ever read these comics growing up? That's a loose term. I'd say it's like, when I was growing up, it's like the best comic strips were, and I share this with a lot of people out there, Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side. Those are the first two. And if I felt like I didn't have anything else to do, at the time, I might wander into a few of the others. I think there was, I can't remember the one. There's a few others. Foxtrot was one. There's a few others. But Blondie most of the time I just passed it by. I do. Yeah. I am kind of vaguely aware. Like last week, I struggled to remember what the family's name was. So it's Dagwood and Blondie. What, right? It's Bumstead. Yeah. And after watching, it's like, oh yeah, that was it. But because of my very loose, awareness of that strip going up, I had forgotten entirely their last name. So it was not a deep connection. Although I know that I did know that it went back a long ways. I will say that at least if I did remember reading it, I didn't see any kind of like the kind of blatant sexism and racism that you see in this movie. And I think they probably, even the comics probably just decided to quietly drop that. I don't know. I don't remember seeing that as growing up in the 80s.
It has fundamentally changed because, yes, you have no choice. You have to fundamentally change what these comics represent. In fact, I did look this part up. When this comic strip first started, Dagwood was a salesman of sorts, and then she was actually a 1920s flapper girl. And the thing is, too, is like he is supposed to be, I don't want to call him an idiot, but I mean, the best kind of description of him is a little bit of a bumbling idiot.
He is partly that. I think he's partly that, and he's partly also, this guy is like the lightning rod for everyone's bad temper. I mean, if he, wherever he goes, he has a cloud over him that people look at him and say, I'm gonna tell him something nasty. He just looks like the kind of guy, he could use a browbeating, I'm gonna talk him down. It's like I'm gonna kick him in the pants. I'm gonna make sure his life is miserable. And that's how everyone treats him, pretty much unprovoked.
And even though like I've never personally read anything about this, I've never really seen it in the comics. I think the idea is, how is this guy with this girl? Because she's supposed to be, even in this movie, she's an attractive person.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be attractive. And he's supposed to, he's got a weird haircut. He fumbles over himself. They're together, and you're kind of asking the question, how are you two together?
As far as the physical differences go, it's like I've seen really good movies where you have a really, good-looking example on one side, usually the woman, and it's like they're some bumbling idiot on the other side, and they can make it work because they see something good in each other that's more than just the superficial, and that has been done really well. But for me, it's like I could never imagine, because like I said at the outset, these guys, they're completely, what's the word I'm looking for? They are unsuited to marriage the way they're portrayed. Both of them. They are, like I said, they're keeping secrets from each other. They're acting unilaterally. So it's like things that will affect both of them, one of them goes to decide to do on their own. No communication. It's like, and they're instantly jealous. And when even the hint of something happens. And the funny thing is that part of the plot involves her trying to make her husband jealous. Maybe that's part of the joke, because their characters are so faulty to the point of ridicule. It's like, I can't even imagine a world where these two got married. How do you even get past the dating, the first date, and they have a kid who, by the way, guys, I don't think there's anyone out there who's tempted to name their kid this, but Baby Dumpling. Everybody in the film refers to him that way. Even his friend. That to me is like, that's just like, I can't believe I'm watching this. I just can't believe I'm watching this.
So I want to double back on something you've already brought up.
Sure.
And I thought it was interesting when you said it, because you talked about, this would be much better if you knew for a fact it was satire. I was just like, of a lot of different tropes. And then you said the stuff that you had is like the Far Side. Also a big Far Side fan. And I think that's probably what drives a lot of this right here. The feelings on this is because, Far Side is satire.
Yeah.
We know that for a fact because Gary Larson has, his most, his first and maybe most popular, maybe not, depends on who you talk to, but it's the cow tools. It's like, how would cows make tools and what would they look like? How would they even use them?
Is that the one he gets flack for because so there's one part that just nobody gets?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, and but the whole concept is it's just funny because why would a cow have tools?
I don't know if it's like satire, because satire has a target, whereas Larson is more just kind of, I think it's more theater of the absurd. It's
in my opinion, I would look at that satire as like satire of just like how absurd life is.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. If you look at it as broadly, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I love about it. It's just like we live in a crazy world.
Yes.
Where if things go just a little bit different,
yeah,
we might have cow tools.
Yeah, cow tools. I know that. A saving grace for some of it is that you can't take it seriously. Because if you did, it would be really bad, things like when a character says, for example, like when Blondie says, I don't want an explanation, I want alimony. And then the plot comes in externally, by the way. It's not like they had to work through this problem out themselves. The plot takes care of their problems for them in a very Deus Ex Machina way. But there is no Deus Ex Machina powerful enough to gloss that over. If it wasn't for the fact that you can't take it seriously anyway, it would be really poisonous and toxic stuff. But that's all, look, I'm putting this one behind me. Folks, we ain't doing the other 27, okay? You got a review for this one. It's the same review for all of them. I can pretty much tell it's going to be that way. You can try and watch them if you want to, and you can tell us about them if you do in the comments. But I don't think we're going to subject ourselves to this anymore. So what's your verdict, man?
Just watch this film.
What?
Watch this film.
Well, if you're on the journey anyway, a lot of us have.
Watch.
Watch this film.
It.
Like wash it out.
Yeah, wash it out. I'm not even giving it like a proper rating. Just wash it.
Wash it away.
Yeah, because okay, so I will give the film a little bit of its due in a couple ways. I think they struck gold on the casting. I know that sounds strange. But like if you look at the character, like if you look at the characters and then look at the characters in the comic strip and the characters in the movie, like the Blondie and Dagwood, specifically, that they did well with what they were given. They did well enough apparently and liked it enough that they decided to sign themselves on for 28 or 27 more. Like this, we're not kidding, folks. There's a lot of these. In fact, I only thought there was one Blondie movie on Tubi, and then like when I got done with it, Tubi was like, hey, would you like to watch all of the other ones?
Would you like to watch all these dozens of more,
Yeah. But
of this thing?
What it suffers from the most is that you have to be familiar with it before you sit down and watch it to understand any of it. And I'm saying like real familiar, like as a person that has watched it or has read it, there were little things. I was like, okay, I see what they're doing here. See what they're doing here. But again, it's just not my. No, it's a different time for starters.
Oh yeah.
But the story it's an incoherent mess because there's no story. It's a bunch of little strips put together to try to make a story, and the overarching plot is Dagwood keeps accidentally doing things, and it keeps getting him into worse trouble.
Yeah,
that's it. And, but it does treat people like 1930s people were treated. I would just I don't recommend it. I can't recommend it. I'd watch it. If you have watched it, okay,
Yeah.
If you liked it, I'm not going to say anything about you liking it, but for me, no.
Yeah,
just no.
For me, this is kind of, after a while it became face-meltingly bad for me. It wasn't. This is not a pretty movie by any stretch of the imagination, but judging it for me was very, very easy at the end. It did make my head explode. And if you watched it with us all the way through the hour plus 8 of this film, you have my sympathies and the loss of your brain, although not my apologies, because that's the movie Bones way. The only question for me was, do these movies have any value in the nuke the fridge department? Be so bad that you can, derive some enjoyment out of it. I would say that if like me, you're a fan of Mystery Science Theater and you become somewhat of a good riffer yourself and you want to like poke holes in the sexism and racism and all the other logical flaws and the terrible stuff in it, go for it. But do it like you would like you're visiting Chernobyl. Okay, you can visit Chernobyl now. By the way, you can visit Chernobyl, but they don't recommend you stay very long. So do that. So there is a little bit of nuke the fridge in there if you feel up for it. I'm not going to say more than 5 minutes worth, but nuke the fridge for 5 minutes. Ryan and I would like to remind the audience out there that if you're enjoying our little adventure in cinematic joy and pain and everything in between, do follow us on your preferred podcast purveyor of choice. Leave a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube, and join the conversation on Facebook. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell us your reviews. So Ryan, tell the folks what we're going to be doing next week.
Next week, folks, we're going to be doing a story that has a lot of popularity to it beyond its actual story. The Last Man on Earth.
Yeah, that sounds real good to see this one. I'll be interested in seeing, especially Vincent Price. We haven't seen one of his films yet in Movie Bone, so looking forward to it. I guess there's not much else to say, Ryan, except, folks, keep tuning in and keep watching movies. And Ryan, I guess I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye, folks.